Hello, welcome back to Casablanca. In this episode, I'm covering The Nightmare Before Christmas, which is a 1993 stop-motion film directed by Henry Selick, written by Caroline Thompson, and starring Chris Sarandon, Catherine O'Hara, and William Hickey. Now, for the longest time, and I'm sure everyone thought this too, I thought The Nightmare Before Christmas was directed by Tim Burton because it's more often called Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. But it turns out it's not directed by him. As I just said, it was produced by Tim Burton, which makes it a little confusing. But, yeah. Also, I didn't realize this until I was preparing to record this episode, but William Hickey is in this, and he played the father in the last movie I covered, Mouse Hunt. The old father, the old guy that I said, he passed away before the film came out, and I think they filmed his scenes on his deathbed. He plays the mad scientist in this movie. So, that's kind of funny, because I did 2 movies in a row with him in it. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. Also, another thing about the cast, Chris Sarandon voiced Jack Skellington, but something I didn't know until I was doing research for this, he didn't do the singing voice of Jack Skellington. No, the singing voice was Danny Elfman himself, which, that was surprising to me. I will say, as classic and beloved as this movie is, I actually didn't see it until about 10 years ago, and I thought it was okay. I think the problem was that this movie was so hyped up throughout my life that it's one of the greatest movies of all time, and it has such a massive fan base and so much merchandise around it, and I don't think you could ever live up to that, especially since I'd never seen it. Like, if I had the nostalgia behind it, if I'd seen it a million times as a kid, I'd probably be like, oh yeah, that's one of the greatest. But I saw it for the first time 10 years ago and was like, that's it? And I saw it again recently. It was in theaters, it was re-released in theaters for the 30th anniversary, and I was like, you know what? I was already planning on covering this, and it was seriously, it was on my list. I made my list of all the upcoming movies for the rest of the year that I was going to cover, and this movie was on the list, and then I saw it was in theaters, and I'm like, oh wow, that's perfect. I will watch it in theaters. And I enjoyed it more the second time, probably because I'd already seen it, and because before I had like a lifetime of hype behind it, and I was disappointed, and this time I knew what to expect, and I actually I still don't think it's one of the greatest movies of all time, but which apparently is controversial, because I told a friend of mine that she holds this movie in like the highest regards, and I was like, I mean, it's not the greatest of all time, but I mean, I still really enjoyed it. And she was like, oh, how dare you? I was like, I didn't say it's a terrible movie. I just said it's, yeah. And so, like, I don't have the nostalgia for it like I did before. I don't have the nostalgia for it like a lot of people do, is basically what I'm saying. And that's controversial to some people, apparently. It's not like with Chicken Run. With Chicken Run, I actually did watch it. As a kid, I saw it when it first came out, and I loved it so much. And then I rewatched it. I'd made it, I put it on the list, and I watched it, and I realized I didn't like it. I don't remember if I said it in that episode, but like halfway through, I realized that I didn't like the movie, and you could actually tell, like halfway through, while I was editing, I could tell the exact moment I realized I didn't like it, and like the rest of the episode I just sounded bored, and I was like, oh no, too late. I don't want to record another episode and replace it. Plus I promised my sister I'd do it. But this one, it's not like that. I I do like it. I do like this movie, but it's, yeah. I feel like I'm just repeating myself at this point. I like it. It's just not like everyone else thinks. I'm gonna move on. The scene where Jack Skellington is in the woods and he sees those trees with all the holidays and he goes into the Christmas one. I kind of don't like that. Not that that's not a good idea. It's a very good idea. It's just that the holidays that are presented, I don't know if it shows every holiday, if it's like a woods of a bunch of trees or every tree is a different holiday. But the trees that we do see are very Americanized. Well, not all of them. Like, there's two of them in particular that I'm kind of like, really? Because it shows Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, Independence Day, Valentine's Day, and St. Patrick's Day. So, yeah, there's Thanksgiving and Independence Day are very American. Well, there's also, Canadian Thanksgiving, but that's not what it shows. And there's other countries that have Independence Days. So, yeah. The America-specific holidays, I'm not fond of putting in, like, international movies. Like, well, I don't know if you'd consider this, it's watched worldwide. Like, someone, like, in Indonesia or something watching this movie, or, like, what's the turkey there for? I don't know, because, like, there's some movies that whenever it's, like, localized, they change things. Like, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, I believe it was. He had a list of everything to get him, like, acclimated to the present, and it's kind of an Easter egg. It's different in each country, so that might be something they do in different countries. Like, if this movie is shown in, like, the UK or China or something, it might show different holidays on the trees based on their local holidays. I didn't look into that, so, like, I probably should have. But yeah, that's something I always thought was kind of weird. When I see that in a movie, I'm like, why did you include that? The Oogie Boogie. That is his demise. I'm gonna go ahead and spoil. There'll be spoilers here, especially this part, because it is such a well-beloved classic that goes back a long ways. His demise, I always thought was kind of creepy, like, really disturbing, which I think that was the point. Plus, I was gonna say it is Tim Burton, but, like, it's not Tim Burton. It's a Tim Burton film, but it's not a Tim Burton film, if you know what I mean. But, like, whenever, like, his thing unravels and there's, like, all these bugs underneath, I always thought that was a little disturbing, which, like, in a good way. Like, it's like, oh, how dare they put this in a kid's movie? Like, no, that's the point. I did find Sally's story to be kind of heartbreaking. Like, she was definitely abused by the mad scientist, and yeah, like, watching it again, I was like, that's one of my least favorite aspects. Again, not in a, how dare they include this aspect. It's more of it's a heartbreaking aspect. It's like, when you're watching her story and it's like, oh no, this is depressing, and I don't like seeing people get abused and mistreated. And she's definitely, like, the mad scientist, he has his moments where it's like, does he care about her? Like, he doesn't act like it. He definitely doesn't act like it. And here's something I didn't know till I was researching for this episode. Apparently, Patrick Stewart recorded narration for the prologue and epilogue, but it ended up not being used, unfortunately. That would have been very interesting. Apparently, it was included on the soundtrack. So, I haven't listened to the soundtrack. there are some of the songs in here that I really like. Like I'm always listening to the this is Halloween, this is Halloween. Well, not always, but like it's on a regular rotation during the holidays. So yeah, I have a playlist of some of my favorite holiday songs, and that's on there, like that one specifically. And what's funny is because it's this. I asked somebody once if this was a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie, and they responded with yes. So, yeah, it can be played at either. I could have done this one earlier, kind of like a transitional movie between the two holidays, but I decided to put it here. This is technically part of a trilogy of Tim Burton movies. I don't know if it's official. Like I said, like I'm not like the biggest fan of this movie, so like I don't know too much about this, and I definitely haven't seen the other two. There's Nightmare Before Christmas, Corpse Bride, and Frankenweenie, which I know Frankenweenie was originally like a short film by Tim Burton, like early 80s or something. It was something like that. I saw a documentary about him, and that was like one of his early things that got him noticed. So when it got made into a full-length movie, it was like a big deal to him, which I think that's pretty cool. But since all three films have a similar art style, like I think fans consider them to be like a trilogy, maybe not like a connected trilogy, kind of like how I have what I call, there's two things that I have that I think I've talked about on here. There's the San Francisco trilogy, which consists of Zodiac, Milk, and Pursuit of Happiness, which are 3 true story movies. And I kept telling myself, I'm gonna own all 3 someday. And like, I didn't even realize till recently that I do own them, because like I wasn't even consciously buying them. Like, oh, this is part of that trilogy. This is like, oh, I want to watch this, and I'm gonna buy it. And then I bought it. And then one day I was thinking about, I should buy this trilogy. And then I was like, all right, I know I own Zodiac. Let's see what, I own Pursuit of Happiness. Oh, okay. Now, Milk's one I already own that. Oh, I unknowingly owned them. And then another trilogy, unofficial trilogy, that I consider is the Alfred Hitchcock trilogy, which consists of Psycho, Rear Window, and Vertigo. And apparently I'm not the only one that thinks that, because I always see them grouped together. And that's a lot of amazing Alfred Hitchcock films, like North by Northwest, The Birds, all those, and The Man Who Knew Too Much. But those are my favorite 3, and I think a lot of people agree with that, so it's not like an unpopular opinion. So I think in that mindset, that's what people mean by this being a trilogy. It's not like a connected or official trilogy, but I think it's more of like, because of who's behind it and the art style, they're like a trilogy. I could be wrong. There might be some connectivity between the 3. I'm not sure. I do need to watch those other 2. Probably should have, but yeah, I didn't think about that until now. The last thing I'll talk about is I've been hearing rumors for the last few years that there's planning to be a sequel. There's gonna be a sequel. And like, some of my friends who are huge fans are like, no, don't do a sequel. And I'm like, well, they're going to make a sequel. If they're talking about doing a sequel, there's no way they're not going to do a sequel for a movie that's as famous as that. It's beloved and classic. There's going to be a sequel. Like Beetlejuice, they've been saying for years there's going to be a sequel. And I was like, there's no way there's going to be a sequel. And look, they're making a sequel. Hocus Pocus 2. Everyone's talked about for a long time there's going to be a sequel, and look, they made a sequel. So with The Nightmare Before Christmas, I kept hearing rumors there's going to be a sequel, and I'm like, well, there's going to be a sequel. But my friends were like, no. The other day, I saw an interview. Well, I didn't see it. I read an interview with Tim Burton where he said there's no reason to make a sequel, and he would have to be the one to greenlight it, and he has no intention to ever make a sequel to that. And I showed that to a couple of my friends who are huge fans of that, and they were like, oh, thank God. And so, yeah, that rumor persisted for so long that I believed it because, yeah, I mean, like I said with Beetlejuice and Hocus Pocus, that rumor persisted for so long that eventually it kind of manifested. But here you got Tim Burton, who's like the only person who could greenlight something like that, saying that that's never going to happen. And I believe him. He's not the type. I don't think Tim Burton's the type to just randomly make sequels. He doesn't really do that often. I don't know a lot of his movies that get sequels. I know, like, obviously, you know, Batman and Batman Forever, but then he walked away from a third one, and there's not a lot of his movies I could think of that have sequels now that I think about it. Oh, this is me adding this in while editing. I just realized that Tim Burton directed Beetlejuice and is directing Beetlejuice 2, so that kind of contradicts what I was just saying, but also doesn't, because it's not very often that he makes sequels to his own movies. So, yeah. I just thought it was kind of funny that I was using Beetlejuice 2 as an example of a movie that was rumored to be made, and then it's made, and then I turn around and said, Tim Burton doesn't really do sequels, only to realize that he was the one that made that. So anyway, back to the original me from like an hour ago. So I'm not surprised he says no. I think if he didn't have the say, like if it wasn't up to him, and if it was strictly up to the studio would be like, the studio would probably already be releasing like Nightmare Before Christmas 5 or something, or 20, or they'd be cranking out sequels because of how popular this is. But because Tim Burton's the one behind it, and he doesn't want to do it, we're not getting a sequel, which I'm okay with. But granted, like I said, I'm not like the biggest fan of this. According to my friends that are huge fans of the franchise, of the film, they're okay with it. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to end the episode here. The next 2 episodes, again, have Christmas in the title. So, get ready for that. I was going to say get used to that. Get used to that. No, get ready for that. But anyway, I'm going to end the episode right here.